The chamber was designed to humble visitors. That was its purpose. Admiral Alara Voss understood that the moment the doors sealed behind her with a sound too clean to be mechanical. White light washed over curved walls, flawless and cold, erasing shadows as if imperfections were forbidden here. She stood alone. Across from her, seated in a perfect arc, the Galactic Arbitration Council waited. 12 of them. Green-skinned, hairless, identical in posture and expression, clad in black diplomatic attire that looked ceremonial rather than practical. Their eyes were large, dark, unblinking. Predators pretending to be judges. Alara felt the dried blood on her temple tighten as she clenched her jaw. She had refused medical treatment. Let them see it. Let them remember what their police action had cost. A low harmonic hum filled the chamber, vibrating through the floor and into her bones. Admiral Alara Voss of Terra, a voice said, amplified and layered, as though several throats spoke in perfect unison. You stand accused of violating Interstellar Accord 17. Unauthorized military escalation. Deployment of restricted weapons. Mass casualties. Alara did not bow. I stand because you summoned me, she replied. Her voice was steady, sharper than she felt. Not because I recognize your authority. A ripple passed through the council. Not surprise. Disapproval. One of them leaned forward slightly. Your species recognized our authority when it petitioned for membership. We recognize your words, Alara said. Your actions came later. A projection bloomed in the air between them. A blue sphere rotating slowly. Earth. Scars of light marked its surface. Burned cities. Atmospheric ruptures. Orbital debris still falling like a second, artificial rain. You were warned, the counselor continued. Your colonies violated containment protocols. We responded. Alara laughed once. A short, bitter sound that echoed too loudly in the pristine room. You exterminated 3 population centers, she said. You called it containment. Do you know how many children lived in the Kepri arcology alone? Silence followed. Not discomfort. Calculation. Collateral loss is regrettable, another voice said. But compliance must be enforced. Alara stepped forward before she could stop herself. The guards, tall, silver constructs built like statues, shifted but did not intervene. Regrettable? She asked. You vaporized hospitals. You shattered orbital schools. You erased evacuation corridors after declaring them safe. That wasn't enforcement. That was an example. The projection changed. Human ships burning in vacuum. Crumpled hulls spinning helplessly. Then another image. A human cruiser unleashing weapons that bent space itself, collapsing enemy vessels into nothing. The council's tone hardened. And now you answer for this. Alara looked at the image of the enemy fleet vanishing. She did not deny it. Yes, she said. That was us. You escalated beyond acceptable parameters. You taught us how, Alara replied. For 2 centuries, humanity played by your rules. We signed your treaties. Limited our fleets. Gave you observers in our command rooms. And when we finally stood equal enough to matter, you decided we were inconvenient. A counselor rose. Taller than the others, its insignia marked with authority. Archon Veltaris, Chief Arbiter. Executioner in all but name. Humanity is volatile, Veltaris said. Emotion-driven. Expansionist. Unpredictable. Your children were born into a species that refused guidance. Alara's hands trembled. She curled them into fists behind her back. Our children were born into homes, she said quietly. Into classrooms. Into ordinary lives. You didn't kill soldiers. You killed the future. Veltaris studied her. And now you threaten the present. No, Alara said. I warn it. A murmur rose, sharper this time. Your fleets are mobilizing. Veltaris continued. Your borders are sealed. Your allies have withdrawn. Humanity stands alone. Alara met its gaze. We've always been alone. She inhaled, steadying herself. This was the moment Command had prepared her for. The moment she had volunteered for, knowing she might never return. You believe we are dangerous because we adapt, she said. Because we learn. You are correct. What you failed to learn is why. Another projection appeared. Not of ships or cities. Of humans. Engineers rebuilding shattered habitats. Doctors working without power. Civilians forming chains to pull survivors from wreckage. Children, burned, scared, alive, being carried through smoke. We adapt, Elara said, because we refuse to let loss define us. Veltaris's voice lowered. You presume to lecture a civilization 10,000 years your senior. No, Elara said. I presume to introduce you. She tapped the console embedded in her belt. The chamber's lights flickered. Just once. Enough. Several counselors stiffened. That signal, Veltaris said sharply. What did you transmit? Elara smiled for the first time. It was not a kind expression. Confirmation, she said. That negotiations failed. Outside the chamber, far beyond the sterile walls and diplomatic posturing, humanity waited. Not with pleas. With resolve. You wanted an example, Elara said, her voice calm, controlled, unmistakably human. You made one of us. Now you'll meet the rest. The guards moved at last, weapons rising. Elara did not resist. The chamber echoed with alarms as the council realized, far too late, that the silence they prized had already been broken. And humanity had finally stopped asking for permission. The first shot was not fired in anger. It was fired in certainty. Across the outer rim of Sol's exclusion boundary, space rippled as human fleets emerged from concealment. Not in chaotic bursts, but in disciplined, layered formations that spoke of years spent preparing for a war no one else believed they would dare to fight. Admiral Jian Rao watched the tactical holosphere from the command deck of the UNV Indomitable. His hands were clasped behind his back, posture rigid, expression carved from stone. Signal received, an officer said. VAS confirmation code verified. Rao closed his eyes for half a second. That was all the grief he allowed himself. Execute Phase 1, he said. Across hundreds of systems, humanity moved as one. The Galactic Council had assumed isolation would break Earth. It had failed to consider what unity looked like when forged by loss. Human war doctrine did not seek immediate annihilation. It sought control. Denial. Pressure applied with precision until resistance became mathematically pointless. Gravitic anchors deployed first, unfolding like metallic flowers around key hyperlane junctions. Alien supply routes collapsed instantly, ships dropping into real space with no warning and no escape vector. Communications followed. Quantum relays went dark as human countercode shredded encryption that had stood unchallenged for millennia. On the bridge of the Council's forward command station, Archon Veltaris felt the shift before reports confirmed it. Multiple nodes unresponsive, an aide announced. Hyperlane traffic halted across 5 sectors. Veltaris rose. That is not retaliation, it said. That is occupation. The Council had expected rage. Bombardment. Terror strikes. Instead, humanity had reached for the arteries. Back on Earth, cities still smoldered beneath emergency shields. In the ruins of Kepri Arcology, Lieutenant Mara Solis stood atop a broken transit platform, watching evacuation shuttles lift the last survivors into the sky. Her armor was scorched, her visor cracked, her voice raw. Civilians clear, she reported. No hostiles remaining. A pause. Then command answered. Understood, Lieutenant. Stand by for redeployment. She looked down at her blood-stained gloves. Where to? Anywhere they still think they're safe. Above her, the sky flared as human carriers punched through atmosphere, engines roaring like thunder gods announcing judgment. The Council's first counterstrike came 6 hours later. Alien dreadnoughts translated directly into contested space near Proxima, weapons hot, formations aggressive. They expected resistance. What they encountered instead was silence. Empty space. Then gravity folded inward. Human singularity minds activated in perfect synchronization, crushing 3 capital ships before their shields could adapt. Survivors scattered, firing blindly as human cruisers decloaked behind them, rail cannons carving precise lines through hull and engine alike. "Disable, don't destroy," Rao ordered calmly from the Indomitable. "We want witnesses." The message was not for the enemy. It was for history. Captured vessels were boarded within minutes. Marines moved efficiently, faces unreadable, weapons lowered once resistance ceased. Medical teams followed. Not for humans. For the enemy crews. On one shattered bridge, a green-skinned officer stared in disbelief as a human medic sealed a wound along his shoulder. "Why?" the alien rasped. "You gain nothing by keeping us alive." The medic didn't look up. "You're wrong." Back in the council chamber, Elara Voss felt the tremor through the floor. Alarms howled now, no longer restrained by protocol. Guards rushed past her containment field, voices sharp with urgency. Veltaris turned toward her slowly. "What have you done?" it demanded. Elara met its gaze without flinching. "What you taught us," she said. "Strategic response. You are destabilizing the order that protects this galaxy." "No," Elara replied. "We're removing the illusion that it was ever neutral." A new projection filled the chamber. Live feeds. Systems falling under human control. Council fleets retreating or surrendering. Member species broadcasting emergency pleas, not to the Council, but to Earth. Veltaris recoiled. "They fear you. They fear change," Elara said. "Fear doesn't make us monsters. What you did with it does." The Archon's voice sharpened. "You will doom yourselves. When the greater powers intervene, humanity will burn." Elara tilted her head. "You mean the ones who've been watching from the dark? The ones who never joined your council because they knew what you were?" Veltaris froze. "Yeah," she continued softly. "We spoke to them too." Far beyond council space, ancient observers adjusted their trajectories. They had seen many civilizations rise and fall. Few had endured judgment with restraint. Fewer still had answered injustice with clarity instead of chaos. Humanity had done both. On the Indomitable, Rao listened as reports flowed in. Sector after sector secured. Civilian populations protected. Enemy command fractured. "Admiral," an officer said. "Incoming transmission. Origin unknown." The screen flickered. A figure emerged, towering, luminous, older than most recorded stars. "We have observed," the being said. "And we have decided." Rao stood straighter. "On what grounds?" "On precedent," the entity replied. "You were wronged. You responded with purpose. That is rare." Rao nodded once. "Then stay out of our way." The being's expression shifted. Something like approval. "We already are." The transmission ended. Rao exhaled slowly. Humanity was no longer asking to belong. It was redefining what belonging meant. In the council chamber, Veltaris sank back into its seat as reports turned desperate. "You could have been guided," it said, almost to itself. Elara stepped closer to the barrier, voice low, unwavering. "We were," she said. "By loss. By love. By every child you thought wouldn't matter." She turned as guards finally arrived to escort her away. Outside, the galaxy burned with change. And for the first time in its long history, it was not humanity begging to be heard. It was everyone else learning to listen. Silence returned to the chamber, but it was no longer obedient. Elara Voss felt it press against her like gravity, heavy with consequences already unfolding across the stars. The council chamber screens showed cascading failures, member worlds declaring neutrality, others requesting protection under human terms. Guards escorted her through corridors that once symbolized supremacy, now trembling with hurried footsteps and fractured authority. She did not look back. Humanity had crossed the line no species ever uncrossed, and the galaxy was adjusting its balance, painfully, irreversibly, exactly as intended. History would record this moment as the quiet beginning of defiance itself. Alara's confinement was brief. Humanity did not abandon its messengers. A human strike team breached the Council station without firing a single lethal shot, overriding security, disabling guardians, extracting her with surgical calm. Watching from a transport viewport, Alara saw Council space shrinking behind them, not conquered, simply bypassed. That hurt the Council more than destruction. They were irrelevant now. Admiral Rao's voice came through the channel, steady, familiar, grounding. "Welcome home, Alara," he said. For the first time since Kepri burned, she allowed herself to breathe. The war, however, was far from finished and consequences waited beyond victory alone. The galaxy responded unevenly. Some species resisted, clinging to Council doctrine out of fear, not loyalty. Others defected openly, offering intelligence, resources, even soldiers. Humanity accepted none blindly. Trust was earned, verified, tested. In liberated systems, human engineers repaired infrastructure before raising flags. Food arrived before warships stayed. Children were evacuated before treaties signed. It was not mercy. It was strategy shaped by memory. Humanity would not rule through terror. It would rule through comparison. Every world could measure what life looked like under human protection and decide freely without coercion or annihilation from ancient overseers or councils anywhere else. Veltaris watched the collapse from a darkened chamber, authority stripped, voice ignored. The council still existed, technically, but it was hollow. Decisions no longer shaped reality. They reacted now, pleading for relevance. Veltaris summoned Alara through secure channels, desperation replacing arrogance. "End this," it said. "Humanity has proven its point." Alara studied the image, seeing not an enemy, but an institution exposed. "No," she replied. "We're proving something else." Survival without submission was the lesson humanity intended the galaxy to learn through endurance, restraint, and consequences carefully chosen after centuries of observation and silent judgment by powers long unseen before. The final confrontation did not come as a battle. It came as a vote. Systems across the galaxy cast declarations, not of allegiance, but of withdrawal from the Council. Trade routes realigned. Defense pacts dissolved. Humanity did not demand leadership. It offered stability, security, and autonomy enforced by consequence. The Council's charter expired without ceremony. Veltaris resigned publicly, its final address filled with disbelief. "You changed everything," it said. Alara answered simply, "So did you." The galaxy recorded the moment as an ending disguised as renewal and feared what humanity might become next without chains, overseers, or permission ever again. Years later, children played beneath reconstructed skies on worlds once scarred by Council fire. Human teachers taught alien languages beside human ones. No statues of conquerors stood in plazas, only memorials to loss. Humanity remembered because forgetting invited repetition. Alara retired from command, choosing distance over reverence. She walked quiet stations, listening more than speaking. People recognized her sometimes, but she corrected them gently. "I wasn't the beginning," she said. "I was the message." That message echoed wherever power considered itself untouchable and reminded civilizations empathy was strength, not weakness earned through suffering, restraint, and shared survival across endless stars. Admiral Rao remained in service longer, guiding transition rather than conquest. He believed endings required caretakers. When asked if humanity feared retaliation, he answered honestly. "We plan for it," he said. "But fear no longer decides for us." Human fleets slowly reduced their presence, not because they were weak, but because they had demonstrated capability. Strength, once proven, did not need constant display. That lesson unsettled the galaxy more than war ever had. Peace maintained by readiness reshaped every strategic doctrine written afterward, from border defense to interstellar diplomacy alone. Ancient observers withdrew quietly, their curiosity satisfied. Humanity had passed an unspoken test. Not of power, but of restraint under provocation. They left behind no monuments, only warnings recorded in forgotten archives. Do not corner humans. Do not underestimate grief. Do not mistake patience for submission. These notes spread slowly, whispered among elder species, reshaping caution across eons. Humanity never heard them, and did not need to. The galaxy itself remembered. History adjusted its trajectory, bending away from tyranny toward balance because one species refused to accept sanctioned slaughter anymore. On Earth, memorial lights rose every year, not in anger, but in promise. Names were read, futures imagined, lessons preserved. Humanity did not forget its dead, but it refused to be chained to them. Survival meant growth, not stagnation in pain. Children born after the war learned of the Council as history, not threat. They inherited vigilance, not hatred. That was humanity's quiet victory, harder than war, stronger than revenge. The galaxy watched, uncertain whether to fear or emulate them because humanity proved justice could survive power without becoming cruel. And so the era ended without a throne, without a tyrant crowned. Humanity did not rule the galaxy. It changed it. The Council's greatest mistake was believing strength meant control. Humanity's greatest lesson was knowing strength meant responsibility. The stars remained vast, dangerous, and full of unknowns, but one truth endured. When humanity says never again, it does not mean negotiation. It means action, measured, relentless, and unyielding. That promise travels faster than fleets and lasts longer than empires, echoing wherever innocence is threatened by distant authority again anywhere.